How's it going, folks? Welcome back to the channel. So, more transfer news for Celtic. Matt O'Reilly joins the club from MK Dons. £1.5 million is the reported fee. Who knows if there's going to be add-ons as well. He joins from MK Dons. He's a midfielder formerly of Fulham, and it seems like he is an absolutely quality player from what the reports are saying. The data backs it up. He seems to be top of the list, 95th, 97th percentile in all the right places that you're looking for him. And this is further indication that Ange Postecoglou wants to build a squad capable of being a strong 11 regardless of who's fit. And I did a video yesterday talking about how important Cal McGregor is. It looks like this guy, Matt O'Reilly, is going to be a player who's going to be able to play in his position. Now, from the reports and from speaking to different people, he's going to be a midfielder that's going to play number 8 probably primarily. He can score, he can pass, he seems to be an all-rounder, and he seems to have real potential to grow as a player. Now, in this video, I'm going to speak to Liam from the MK1 podcast, an MK Dons fan podcast. Who better to speak to about an MK Dons player than an MK Dons fan? I speak to him about what kind of player he is, how good he expects him to be, and how disappointed the MK Dons fans are with losing Matt O'Reilly to Celtic. But before we get into that, if you're not subscribed to the channel, please do hit the subscribe button below. Hit the bell to get notified every time a video goes live, and do hit the like button so more people can see this channel. Now, without further ado, here is Liam from the MK1's podcast talking about how good Matt O'Reilly is. Okay, so I'm delighted to say that I'm joined on the line by Liam from the MK1 podcast, who's going to tell us a little bit more about Matt O'Reilly. Liam, thanks very much for joining me today.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks for inviting me on.
So I guess one of the key things that I judge whether a player is good or not, or what kind of player we're getting, is by the feeling amongst the fans of the supporting club that he's coming from and what they feel about him moving. So what's your general thoughts of losing a player like Matt O'Reilly? Are the fans going to be very disappointed with this?
I think the overall feeling is disappointment. But as I said to you pre-recording, to have a player of Matt's quality in League One is unheard of, really. And the commitment that Matt did to join the club in terms of training, like essentially a park for 6 months, not having a contract, not being paid, not having a contract, took a massive risk for his own career. I think it's paid off in dividends, quite frankly, with this move on its own. And, if he excels at Celtic, who knows where he could be in a couple of years' time. But yeah, I think overall we expected this move to happen. I see the quality we see week in, week out from Matt has been top tier. And I think if you're into your data shows that really, really well. So yeah, overall it's a shame to a quality player like Matt, but it was always going to happen.
And I was actually just reading about him today and about his move to the Dons and how it came about with a Fulham contract and training in the park and things like that. When he did eventually sign for MK Dons, did he just completely take off immediately, or did he take a little bit of work to bed into the team?
You could also see the quality was there. From my memory, and it was a pretty tough time with Russell Martin initially. And there were a lot of players in transitional period, players had to be brought in. And with the model that we were introducing in the Russell Martin, which is very similar to a Brentford and Norwich model, a lot of players were leaving, a lot of players were coming in. And ultimately players that were also quite good were also leaving as well. So they weren't bad players also. So yeah, it was quite hard for players like Matt to, settle in initially. But I think overall you can see the quality in him. And going into this season, people expect a lot of him. And as I said, I think he's showed that this season. I've said on many features that I've had on podcasts, YouTube channels, that he is one of the better players in League One, if not the best player in League One. And I think an overall reaction as well as some Dons fans, but people who watch the game in general have sort of said, the money that the Celtic are rumored to be paying for Matt O'Reilly is actually quite a cheap deal in general for how good of a player he actually is. Now I'm sure there's more to this than just the initial fee. So it is a football these days. I assume there's selling clauses somewhere. But yeah, I think he's going to absolutely smash it basically in Scotland. And I think the chance of European football for him, if he does get that towards next month, I think he'll relish the challenge like he did here at Milton Keynes.
Yeah, he seems to be a type of player that Celtic have been looking for. They obviously had a deal that fell through with Riley McGree, who's currently moving to a championship club, but European football is something Celtic can offer that's different to a championship club. before we get into the actual playing ability of him, what's he like as a character? He seems to be quite grounded anyway and quite confident.
Yeah, it's funny you asked that actually, because when we had we're fortunate to have Russell Martin, the former gaffer, on the podcast quite a few times, and we asked him, like, who, because obviously every season delimited is always a question whether he's going to retire basically, and we asked who would be a future captain for the side, and he actually pointed out Matt O'Reilly from about 12 months ago now. So it kind of just shows you that alone really is quite a good testament to his character. He's not someone who is very outspoken in terms of on the pitch. I think behind the scenes, he's very much more of a person who will instruct players on where he thinks, and himself, where he thinks he can improve, but be that kind of, not a silent leader, but a player who will rather just show their actions rather than their words. And I think ultimately that's what every team needs, really, especially a successful team. And honestly, he's a brilliant. I think he's a brilliant person overall, and I think he's the type of person you want in the dressing room.
Yeah, he definitely seems that way from what I've read from him anyway, and I suppose only time will tell. But in terms of his playing ability, where does he play? What's the position he plays for Dons in particular?
Yeah, I mean, his predominant role from the sort of 18 or so months he was at the club has been like an 8 role. So not necessarily a holding midfielder, but not attacking one at the same time. Now, he has played as a 10, like a free roaming 10 this season when he's had to. And to be fair, he's done okay in that position, but the role he excels in is where he's allowed to just kind of be the dreaded, like I've mentioned this on the podcast, the dreaded quarterback term in terms of a player who can sort of distribute the ball. And I feel like his ball progression and retention, but also creativity and attacking play numbers kind of outline that. He's basically at the 90th percentile in every stat in terms of passing that isn't long passes or like crosses. And to be fair, the role that he was playing in, he didn't really cross the ball too much, and long passes weren't really his thing. Progressively wise, it was always keeping it on the ground, keeping it nippy, and basically getting it to Scott Twine this season to let Scott Twine do the work. But he could also pick out a pass himself, and of course he's got a few goals this season also. So his progressive runs are quite high. And even defensively, to be fair, he's not necessarily someone who will get into defensive duels a lot and commit a lot of defensive actions. But when he does, he's showing the potential to actually be quite good in it. So maybe if the Celtic coaches are probably looking at one area to sort of build on this game, it probably is the defensive side of things and him being like more proactive in that type of game or game style, I should say. Sorry. Because he's going to sit in that centre of the park and he's going to need to have that side to him. But the data shows that he's quite free roaming, so he can get into those pockets of space where not only can he distribute the ball, but he can also win the ball back, and so it's about unlocking that potential. But yeah, overall, there's not too many weaknesses to his game, and I think that's why a team like Celtic have jumped ahead of these championship teams and actually gone in for him and paid the money, because there's a lot of potential there for sure.
Yeah, you're speaking the language of this channel anyway, because it's largely data analytics based. So, he's basically got insane numbers behind him to back up the performances, apart from obviously the assists and the goals.
Yeah, he's not a League One player. I think that's very clear to see. And I mean, literally any analyst that you speak to will say that they love Matt O'Reilly, and that's
Okay.
Probably countrywide. So I think that tells you what you need to know.
Mm. And in terms of Celtic style of play, so what they've essentially opted for, or what they've had so far, is sort of a deep lying six, Callum McGregor, who's more of a playmaker, not really a centre defensive midfielder. Then you've got essentially what they've been working with, which is two number 10s, but I think that's changing now with the signing of Rio Hatate. In terms of the Celtic system, would you see him playing as that, potentially being a backup to Cal McGregor as a deep lying playmaking role, or can you see him being the person in front of them as the number 8?
Well, I think the beauty of Matt O'Reilly is he can probably play both roles. I think even if he is initially just a squad player for Celtic, I think he's perfect for that type of role. I think long term, I think the potential is there to be a 6. Obviously, I'm not sure, with Celtic in terms of if any of those players are potentially looking to move on in the near future, or they're long term at the permanent signings, that's loan signings. But I think, I think he could either develop into a 6 if he gets better defensively, which we mentioned. He's got the numbers there to do that, the underlying numbers. But obviously, the 8's where he's excelled here at Don's for 18 months. So I suppose it depends on what you'd say you desperately need. And I think Matt O'Reilly definitely got the determination and the hard work to prove you wrong on whatever, or prove you right or wrong on whatever role you think he's going to be in.
Is he right-footed or left-footed?
Left.
Left. And is he predominantly left? Like, is he a guy that can use both feet, or is he strong left foot? Because we have a lot of left footers in midfield at the minute.
I've rarely seen him use his right foot from memory.
Okay.
To be honest.
Okay. Well, that's we'll mark that down as a potential down point for him. So just in general, then, with this transfer, it's said to be 1.5 million. If you were to potentially give it a rating out of 10 of what type of player Celtic are getting here, what would you give it?
Well, I think potentially he could go as high as he wants to. I generally think he'll be a Premier League player if not a high, definitely be top of Scottish football anyway in a couple of years, 100%. Obviously, the money side of things comes into it when we're talking, any ratings on deals. So I think both clubs get a win-win so long as there's a decent sell-on clause from our perspective. I think there will be. Liam Sweeting, our sporting director, is no mug when it comes to that side of things. So I'm sure if anywhere between 15 and 20%, I think we'll be pretty happy with that. But yeah, no, I think I was saying on our podcast today, a lot of our deals this season happen win-win for both clubs, and I think there's no different here. Win-win here for both clubs. So yeah, I'd probably give it a solid 8 out of 10 for Celtic, with a potential to definitely get into a 9 or a 10 if he carries on his progression that he's been showing at Dons.
Sounds good to me. Liam from the MK1 podcast, thanks very much for that.
No worries.
So that was Liam from the MK1 podcast talking about Matt O'Reilly. My thanks to Liam for joining me and telling us all about Matt O'Reilly and what kind of player he's going to be. Seems like Celtic have a really good player on their hands. Really excited to see what he's going to do. And once again, it's just great that we're adding strength and depth in the positions that we needed to. Ange Postecoglou playing a little bit of mind games with the media as well, saying the Celtic weren't going to sign anybody, and then they snapped this guy up. So great signs for Celtic in this transfer window. I think that's a really good transfer window for Celtic overall as well. Thank you for watching this video. And again, if you're not subscribed, or even if you come to this channel regularly and you're not subscribed to it, please do hit the subscribe button below. Like the video as well. Leave a comment. Let me know what you think of the videos. Let me know what you think of Celtic this season. And I'll try to get back to everybody as soon as I can. Thanks for watching, folks. We'll chat to you later. Good luck.